Hi everyone. As you can probably tell, I'm in my favourite spot in London on a warm summer's evening, which is the Studio Apart Hotel that I stay in when I'm here. And I didn't really actually get around to letting you know when I was going to speak tonight, so hopefully some people might be around while I'm speaking. If not, as usual, you'll catch up a little later. And I just wanted to talk about what it can be like to be vulnerable when you have something that for some people can mean they may not understand what you're talking about, or they may even just misjudge you altogether as soon as you announce what it is you're talking about. So as you probably had heard me say, if you've spoken to me before, I have bipolar disorder. And it took me nearly 30 years to get to the point where I actually told anybody outside of my closest family about it. And a lot of that had to do with the social stigma that was around the fact that if you had something like bipolar disorder, there was no way that you could lead people in an organisation or hold down a regular job or any of those sort of things. So I learned as a female in male-dominated fields that you kept all of that to yourself. Now, coming to the point as a speaker and an author where it was important to share about me so that the people that I was connecting with and working with, etc., could actually understand where I was coming from and what I was talking about and actually see me for my true authentic self, I realised I needed to speak about the fact that I had bipolar disorder. But this wasn't an easy thing because it's really difficult to be vulnerable when you know you are going to be judged. Even though I've been very fortunate, most of the people around me haven't openly judged me and they've accepted me for who I am because they've known me, there is still a level of judgment, particularly when you're stepping out into a world of unknown, and it can be quite difficult. It was a very big step that I had to take in order to do that. And part of the reason I'm talking about it today is, as I've mentioned in the little blurb, I've spent the first day in a high-level business mastermind with my business mentor, Jerry Robert, who is quite a fabulous guy, got a brilliant marketing brain on him. And just some of the discussions that came up during the course of the day reminded me of the fact that if we're going to be genuine, speakers, authors, people that actually go out there and talk to people about wanting to change behaviours, not just, lift up a mood or something, but actually change behaviours, there's a vulnerability that we have to be willing to put out there. We have to be willing to be genuinely ourselves and not necessarily talk about everything, but depending on what message you're trying to get across, you need to talk about stuff. And as the message I'm trying to get across is about dealing with lots of things, including looking after your mental health, I couldn't keep my mental disorder to myself. I had to share it. And that was a big step, and it takes a lot. And it's still, every day that I sit in front of a camera or talk to an audience and I talk about it, it's still not the easiest thing in the world to do, because I still feel like there's going to be a day where someone is going to come back with, as has happened, oh yeah, but you can't have somebody with bipolar disorder working in an organisation because, when you got to do networking and stuff, they'd always be sad. And it's like, what the hell? But that's some of the stuff that people have come back with, or you don't really know what you're talking about, or how can you do that? So there does come this time where you've actually got to be willing to just take the good with the bad and realise that what you're talking about is a huge step. Now, why do I share this? It's because what I want to get people to understand is as someone who's willing to really stand up and talk about it, I can talk about how hard it is to be vulnerable. And I've stood on stages all over the world for many, many years and talked about lots of things. To have that difficulty being someone who's comfortable about speaking about my life and myself as part of my message, imagine what it's like for somebody who's dealing with a mental illness or a mental health disorder and they've only just discovered it and they're trying to move through those steps. They're trying to figure out how they discuss it with people when we're in a society and an environment which, for all intents and purposes, no matter how hard we've worked on it so far, still is not entirely open to discussing mental health openly. Because we take the words mental health, which is just a thing. It doesn't mean positive or negative, but we tend to take it to be negative. So that's just my food for thought today. You know, how do you think? Try putting yourself in someone else's shoes if you haven't actually been there, or if you have been there, think about how you felt at the time, and how easy is it just to talk to anybody, be it a close friend or a total stranger. Remembering I said I didn't even tell my best friend until a couple of years ago, and I've kept this to myself for 30 years. So just something to consider. As I've mentioned, I'm Maggie Georgopoulos, author of Up the Ladder in the Skirt, and I do mental health and leadership training, in particular for women in STEM. And what I wanted you to just get around the idea is the level of vulnerability that actually comes with talking about mental health. So I look forward to speaking to you tomorrow, and hopefully I will come to you sometime during the day from the Ritz, which is where we're having our mastermind, and I'll see what pops into my head then. But I'll talk a little bit more about another aspect of mental health awareness, or things for us to think about in mental health. Thank you.